Let's hear it.
Nancy is called to this town in Florida to investigate the murder of Jake Rogers, who is a student at this high school in Florida. And she's helping this guy named Detective Beach, who is on the case um, for the police. And she's basically trying to figure out who killed him and why they would do that.
Pretty concise. However, what state does it take place in again?
Florida.
3 times.
I couldn't remember the name of the town.
I don't know what it was. No, it was like Palo something because the high school was named after it, wasn't it?
Like Paldeo.
Listen, if it's not Titsville, I'm not interested. That's the motto. So yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good summary of it. There's it all takes place essentially in a high school and then in the diner that Jake, the murder victim, works at. And it's kind of one of the more intense Nancy Drew games, I would say, because it actually has to do with a murder and not just like some stolen jewelry or a contested will or something.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. She's also staying with her Aunt Eloise in town.
Who we don't see at all throughout the game.
Aunt Eloise could like literally not exist for all we know. But we do see her house.
We do.
Those are the 3 locations, I guess. There's only 3, which is fine. In the old version, all the characters were like 2D because they couldn't like do that yet in 1998, I guess. So now in this version, they're all 3D, and there's also Detective Beach was not in the original, so he's a new character.
Thank God they added him because the game would not be the same without that khaki pants and striped button-up shirt.
It would not be the same without him sitting in the diner the entire game, telling us how bad of a job we're doing.
He looks like if someone Googled like Florida pedophile, I feel like his image would come up. Like he looks like a stereotypical creeper, essentially.
Yeah, and I think like the character who works in the diner, Daryl, like even says he's kind of like creepy. He's like, oh, that creepy guy in the corner.
Yeah. Which the cover that Nancy uses is that the detective is his uncle because Daryl, who also works at the diner, goes to the high school and is one of the suspects for the possible murder. So every time she goes to the diner, she has to pretend that she's meeting her uncle Steve, I believe his cover name is.
Yeah, but also like, why would she want to go see Uncle Steve that often? Like multiple times in one day.
Yeah. Once again, this is another case that it takes place all in one day.
Yeah.
This whole game, which a lot less action happens in comparison to the other game that we just played, Secret of the Old Clock. I would say that this game is much more text focused. It really all revolves around the conversations that you have with the 4 other students.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because like in Old Clock, there was like the fire and like tunnels and whatever. Like things happened. There were plot points.
There's more settings.
This was kind of just like the murder happened and then nothing else really happens until like the end. Except for getting like almost burned to death in the boiler room of the high school. Which happens when somebody's like, hey, I have the answer to your mystery in the boiler room of the high school. And Nancy's like, seems safe. So she goes down there and then they did something with the boiler and it's going to blow up. So that's one of the puzzles in the game, and it's a little high stakes.
Something that we had to Google.
Yeah.
In order to not die. Because I think at that point we were just like, okay, we're just done. Like,
yeah,
this is...
it's not a quick, it's a very quick turnaround. Like like it really was like, if you don't get it done immediately, you blow up. Which maybe was because we were on Senior Detective.
Oh yeah, good point. We played this one on Senior Detective, immediately regretted it. 30 seconds in, we were like, oh my God, we should not have done that because we didn't get the hints
Yeah.
and the little checklist that you do for junior detective. So we pushed ourselves personal growth, never again. I hated the feeling of self-improvement, and I don't want to feel it.
But yeah, there wasn't really much of a plot besides murder, and basically you find out that Jake was blackmailing most of the students who are like in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
everyone has a motive.
Jake turns out to kind of be awful.
He is awful, yeah.
He's blackmailing all of these people and in very creepy ways, like putting cameras in their lockers and kind of stalking all of them. And he doesn't have like a noble reasoning behind it. It's just to get money or to get like one of the characters to go out with him. He's just not a very likable person. And the way that he leaves clues throughout the game, too, is kind of creepy because he kind of knows that someone's going to kill him. So he leaves clues all over the place, which is how you find the evidence in the blackmailing. But it's like,
Why would you do
I
that?
don't know. You
But
know,
yeah. He also, when you first get into the school and you're talking to everybody and you're like, so tell me about Jake Rogers, like every single person is like, he sucks.
yeah.
Not the way you talk about somebody who was just brutally murdered,
Yeah.
in your
Yeah,
high
he was brutally murdered. He was beat up and then pushed down a flight of stairs, and yet everyone was still like, he is the worst. Which that's the type of uniform consensus that at that point I feel like you just have to respect.
There are 4 characters who are students, the first of which is Daryl Gray, who works at the diner.
Mega hottie. First reaction when I saw him, he is kind of acts like this rich kid, but one of the reasons why, like through the blackmailing evidence, we realized that he might not be rich.
Yeah, like his dad's company was actually doing pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like such a classic high school rumor. Like,
Oh, they were poor.
yeah, exactly. Like that's the big secret about the Gray family is that they're actually poor.
Join the club. And then the one girl in this game,
We stan
Connie, Connie
Connie
Watson.
Watson. Hey,
Well,
baby. What's up? She's a hall monitor, first of all, so she's a total narc. And she's also very into jujitsu.
I think it was judo.
You know what? You're right. It absolutely was judo. So Connie's super into judo and into narking on people. And her big blackmail secret is that she recently entered the men's judo tournament instead of the women's judo tournament. And she won it. But she showed up in like a skin tight black leather suit. And because of that, they didn't realize she was a woman. So they let her enter and then gave her the money and the trophy. And Jake put a video camera in her locker and caught her returning the trophy to her locker. So that's her deep dark secret is that she's really good at judo, and that's worth killing over, apparently.
Yeah, we're supposed to believe that's like a good motive. Like, oh, I can't have somebody knowing about my judo skills.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's an exchange student. What's his name? Hal or
Hal.
Hal? Okay, Hal Tanaka. He's a Japanese exchange student. He sits in the study lounge the whole game, and his thing is that he is good at school, which is just
They really play into some
yeah,
stereotypes here. Yeah, whenever you ask anyone about him, they're like, oh, he studies too much. That's my
yeah,
impression of Hulk, the next character. But
yeah.
I won't jump the gun here. And his Hal's dirty secret is that he took too many classes, and in order to keep up with all the coursework, he plagiarized an English essay. And if he gets caught, his family will make him return to Japan. So he has a little bit more at stake
Yeah.
than the judo girl. But still not anything worth murdering someone over.
No. Yeah. And then the last character is Hulk. He has a real name. I forget what it is.
Hector Sanchez.
Hector Sanchez, and he's a football star, and he's too cool for school. He talked down to us. He calls us clingy. He didn't really have a whole lot to say the whole game. I feel like we reached a point pretty early on in the game where he just had nothing else to say for the rest of the game.
He got recently injured. That was kind of his whole thing, is that he is really good at football. Not so good with the books, but what can we say? When you're Hulk, you don't need literature to get the ladies. And he recently got injured, and then his dirty secret that he's being blackmailed over is a little bit more extreme than the other two, one could say, which is that in order to cope with the pain of his recent injury, he started doing steroids. And to keep up with the addiction, he broke into a local pharmacy and robbed them of their steroids, which he's been using. And that's why he's been able to continuously compete in the football games.
Yeah, which is a little severe. He also says at one point, like, it really sucks because they didn't even like help the pain go away, because it's a steroid. It's not like a pain reliever.
Yeah.
So it's like
Hulk
cool.
should have done some WebMD Googling before he decided to rob a pharmacy.
They didn't have that in 1998.
Hulk should have opened an encyclopedia before he decided to rob a pharmacy. There's a library in the game. It's very central. He could have gone to the library.
There is a very large library that, like, I feel like half the game takes place in the library, but also nothing happens in the library,
That's kind of how the whole game is we did beat the whole game in about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And it felt like both the longest and shortest amount of time that any human has ever experienced.
Going back to the characters, I feel like I'm going to kind of riff off of what my brother Connor in his video essay about this game that is way more high quality than anything we will produce.
We'll link it. We'll link it in the description now that we're real YouTubers.
When he said that, they did a good job with like giving everybody a motive, but like you don't really get to know any of the characters, which I feel like is kind of true. Like there's moments where, you find out Connie really likes Daryl, but she couldn't go out with him because Jake was blackmailing her, and you're like, oh, Connie,
Yeah.
Besides
you find like little love notes that she wrote to him and like crossed out, which is very cute.
It was cute. Besides that, there's also, Detective Beach.
Such an unfortunate name, but it makes sense because he's a little bitch. And I stand by that. Get that censored. I don't care.
Basically the whole game he's just like, what do you got for me? And we're like, this. And he's like, you gotta work harder, Nancy. And it's like, are you actually with the police department? Like, who are you? Which, like, it makes you question the caliber of the police department in this town in Florida, if this is the guy who is, and also if they're outsourcing to, like a teenage detective from nowhere near Florida. Which
they spent all of their money on the investigation on Nancy's American Airlines flight out there.
Yeah.
She got a lot of leg room, but unfortunately they have no money to DNA test anything nor fingerprint it.
Yeah. And just a little, character analysis of, the sixth character, Nancy, here. She's kind of a little bad at her job once again. And I don't know if it's just because we've had, 2 games in a row where she's like this, or if it's always been like this and I just didn't realize, but she like really comes out with like the questions. She's like, did you kill Jake?
Mm-hmm.
Why would like the new girl in school just be like outright asking people if they committed murder? Yeah, I don't know. The characters were fine. I feel like I wouldn't rate them very high, but
I don't know. I did really like Well, see, I was just trying to be friends with them. I just reverted back to like me being in high school and like Hulk, like I would love to be buddies with Hulk, just like a good old bra.
That
And
makes
like Connie, absolutely. She's such a strong woman.
Yeah, Connie is really cool.
I
We never
stand.
like I think they were all like nice people to talk to. I just wish we kind of got more from them, which
Yeah.
wasn't their fault. Whoever wrote the script, it's your fault.
Never their fault. Yeah. All
Okay,
right, the puzzles,
the puzzles.
the third aspect of this game. And let me say they were a mess. An absolute mess.
They were a mess.
I don't even know if you could call them puzzles.
Well, it started out in the beginning with like a slider puzzle that took me forever because on senior
Yeah.
detective it's like 4x4 and those are hard when they're 4x4s and it took me
Mhm.
a while.
Once again, though, a game for children, but that's okay.
I think this one's actually E10 and up.
Oh, sorry. How old are you again? 10?
22. I'm over 10. But so there was that. I guess there weren't that many actual puzzles. Like I feel like maybe because this was the first game they didn't really like have their shtick yet with their puzzles. Maybe they just kind of it was more like a very long scavenger hunt that ended
Yes.
in kind of an unsatisfying way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the main theme of puzzles throughout it was different encrypted messages in on bulletin boards and hidden in books and things like that. So a lot of it was just clicking on random objects and hoping to find part of this code that you used for the 18-step Grand Master puzzle, which was very confusing
yeah.
and like involved the periodic table and like this decoder and was something that you really had to write down on a separate piece of paper. Otherwise, I don't think it's humanly possible for you to have figured it out.
No, it took a lot
Um,
of like this is I don't know if you'll be able to see this on my on the cam, but like this is like the final step. This was me
yeah,
collecting all the information. It took forever.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and like I think if you were just going, luckily like Nancy writes them down in her like notebook, but if you like weren't paying attention, like you wouldn't really think to be like okay like I need to collect these 18 things and then like he kind of spells it out in the book because they Jake set up the final puzzle for whatever reason and he kind of like lays out the steps but it's still like it was hard. um
hmm
I remember when I first played this game as a child more or less I was probably like 12 or something. I like we could not get it, like me and my friends, like we ended up just looking it up because we
yeah.
didn't really like we couldn't understand. I feel like most of the games don't really require you to like cross-reference that many things.
And
Yeah,
all of the puzzles that weren't about that specific end game task really didn't have that much relevance overall. Like there were like word puzzles where you had to like associate letters with numbers and like read things backwards or like up and down. But like what it spelled out was just kind of like silly things like Hal cheats or like there's
yeah,
two crimes here. Like nothing that actually really furthers the plot. It's
yeah.
just kind of like warnings.
And there were a bunch of numbers written everywhere that we never figured out. Like we never used them. Like
Mhm.
it was kind of like we thought it was going to go to a puzzle, and it just like kind of didn't.
Yeah.
And there was an arcade game in the diner, but it was from one of the other games. Like it was
Haunted
from
Carousel.
and like you didn't need to play it. So once I was like, oh, I don't need to do this, like because it's kind of hard. So
Yeah. What would you rate puzzles overall out of 10?
5.
Yeah. I
Yeah, like I
I'd
feel
probably maybe say 4.
yeah, like the last puzzle is really hard. And it's really the only puzzle.
Yeah.
So if you're not into like that kind of like let me write down a million things and then like use the periodic table, like you're not gonna be into it.
Mhm. It's kind of a crazy end game. So
Yeah.
to give some context, there is a part about halfway through the game in which you get a phone call from this guy named Mitch Dillon.
Yeah, Mitch Dillon.
And he is just like, quit you snooping around, otherwise you're going to get in trouble. Just like that. I was actually the voice actor for him.
In fact.
Yeah. And so you call him back and you're like, hi, I have caller ID because it's now 2010. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. I'm going through a tunnel, you know, which is ridiculous. And then it just, that's it. That's, you know, it just, you don't really hear from Mitchie again. So after you solve the final puzzle, you get this journal that has been hidden. And it's essentially what you've been looking for this whole time is Jake's journal. Oh, wait, shit. No, that's not what you get.
You get a tape.
You get a tape.
And the tape is like Daryl's blackmail information, because that wasn't on the first tape you found.
Yes.
It's basically just like, oh, he was
Daryl gets his special tape.
Yeah, Daryl was selling his dad's like company secrets to like Mitch Dillon.
Yes.
And Jake found out, and then found out that Mitch Dillon was selling them to none other than Detective Beach.
The Florida pedophile.
Plot twist that he was not a real detective.
Who could have seen it coming?
Not Nancy, a real detective who apparently is paid for this. That's questionable. But yeah.
So we're in Aunt Eloise's house watching this videotape that reveals that, you know, Jake is selling these secrets to Mitch, and then Detective Beach is buying them from Mitch, and Detective Beach is, you know, the shady guy. And we hear something in Aunt Eloise's house, and we turn around, and he's there with a gun. Oh boy, did I scream.
Oh my god. It was a little frightening. Like, he kind of corners you and then, yeah, just pulls out a gun.
Pulls a gun on you.
Yeah, because basically he lost, I guess he had a notebook where he was writing down all these secrets, and then he just left it somewhere, because that's what you do when you have government secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually what he had hired us to find. And he played it off as like Jake's journal, but it was really his journal. But he didn't kill Jake. Mitch Dillon killed Jake, a character we've never even met. He just called us once.
Called us one time, told us to stop our snooping. Snoopy snooping.
Snoopy snooping.
But yeah, and the thing is that Jake isn't even like, I have these government secrets, like I'm going to turn them over to the proper people, like I'm going to bring this like whole like conspiracy ring to justice. He's like, I have these government secrets, I'm going to sell them. Once again, Jake's not a great guy. Maybe it's not the worst thing that he got murdered. Maybe he's a cartoon character. Okay, it's okay. I can say that.
We never find out what he looks like, which I feel like does, depersonalize it a little bit.
Yeah. And yeah, and then so somehow this detective found Nancy in the house, which does not make sense because Nancy left from the school, which this detective was not at the school, he was at the diner, and then it went to the aunt's house, which this detective, not a real detective, had no knowledge of where she was staying, and he just showed up just in the living room, pulled a gun on her, and was like, where's the journal? And Aunt Eloise, who is just a normal school librarian, happened to have a system set up in her hallway safe where if you entered the wrong code 3 times, a giant metal cage falls on you. So Nancy gave him the wrong code to the safe, lied, said that the journal was in the safe, a cage fell on him. He's still holding a gun. He still has a loaded gun. The cage bars you can shoot through. He decides not to and just he's like, Nancy Drew, I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you, meddling kid.
I guess it would have been a little obvious if, like Aunt Eloise came home and Nancy was dead and there was a guy in a cage with a gun. Like, there's really only one person who
Worked it out.
done it.
Houdini did it. He could do it.
Yeah, and I feel like usually the endings, there's a little bit of difficulty to them, or kind of like a pressure against time.
Yeah.
The Secret of Middle Clock, which we recently reviewed, like it was a car chase in Secret of Shadow Ranch. I remember the ending of that one is like actually pretty hard. Like, if you don't have it figured out, like the puzzle ahead of time, like you're kind of screwed. But this one was just kind of like, yeah, you just gave him the wrong answer. Yeah, I mean, yeah, then the little recap at the end, she basically just says that um he went to jail, but also nobody knows who he is. Like, his name never gets revealed, which, who is this man? And then like Hulk doesn't even like get arrested for the whole steroid thing. They're just kind of like,
Oh yeah, they're like, he pays the pharmacy back as if he didn't commit a very serious crime.
yeah, he just handed him some cash. Connie got the judo people to open up the competition to women. Hal got his scholarships, and don't know about Daryl. Did he get a happy ending?
No, his dad's stock plummeted and he can't run for office anymore.
So Daryl just
Wah, wah.
so Daryl got the short end of the stick.
Well, Daryl was trading government secrets, so the fact that he wasn't in federal prison,
Mm. Betty
you
is
know.
just a kid. Okay.
Maybe he's what?
He's just a kid.
Oh my god.
I'm just trying to sell some secrets. Yeah, but apparently in the original, and I only know this because of Connor's video essay, apparently you have a gun and you need to pull it on Mitch Dillon to save Daryl's life.
Good.
So that sounds
I wish Nancy had a gun. That's the one thing that this game is missing. Nancy's possession of firearms. These cases would go so much faster if Nancy just had a gun in her hand the whole time. Like, all of these people, they wouldn't be giving her the runaround.
I would say, I'd rate the game like a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, it did have like more suspense to the ending, I thought. Like it genuinely was more surprising and higher stakes because of the fact that there was like a murder involved, and the possibility of Nancy dying was kind of thrown in there. However, I just feel like the execution of it wasn't that great, and it just kind of like, when it was over, I just kind of was like, oh, that's it? Okay. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably say 5 out of 10 as well. Not the best Nancy Drew game.
Not the best, but maybe not the worst.
We'll find out.
We will find out.
Game.
Good game.
Good.
I would say, as I shook her interactive's hand.
It's like you spit on it beforehand. You ever do that in sports? Like, if you really didn't like the other team, you'd lick your hand before you went and like shook them?
No, I did not do that.
Okay. Well, we had different childhood experiences.